the importance of waking up in the morning and spending some time being in presence or having some way of grounding and aligning yourself. Perhaps sometimes we'll not do that because we've got this to-do list of things in the world that we need to get done, have breakfast, get to work, take the kids to school, whatever it may be. And we won't do it because we've got stuff to do. And it sort of laughed at this concept and echoed that statement that's in A Course in Miracles, that you need do nothing, that there is nothing to do. And this has been something that I've discussed before because it's such an interesting idea to me that there is nothing to do, that I need do nothing, because obviously to ego and to Flo and her body identity and her self-identity, there are so many things that I want to do because of this exact thing, that they've got this to-do list. I've got this to-do list of things that I want to get done. And that's just something I've become aware of, about inquiring into who is it that wants to do all of these things? Who is it that wants to achieve and make? And obviously when you frame it that way, you recognize that it's ego. And then once you've recognized that it is the ego, sometimes that's not enough for you to let it go. You spend, or you have spent, however many years of every millisecond believing that you're a body with this separate identity and these wants and dreams and all of these kind of things. So it's to ask yourself, who is it that desires it, who wants to achieve, finding out that it's the ego, it's a separate self, and then ascertaining as to why you want to achieve. What is it that achieving will bring you? Because the ego is always saying that there is more to be had, there is more to be gained, that we are not whole and complete as a separate self, and that we will find that fulfillment and happiness and wholeness and completeness in, achieving an Oscar or a Nobel Peace Prize or whatever it is. And so we're looking outside of ourselves for that fulfillment. And it's a really tough one. I so get it, especially as someone in their mid-20s, where a lot of my friends who I went to university with are, successful in life. They've got quite good jobs and they're, living in nice flats in London and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a different path, obviously, that I've taken. I've taken the path of self-realization and whatever that means. And this is where I think it's important to clarify that there is a doing and that there is a being, and that you can still achieve and do things in the beingness, but you're coming from love and being in a state of love, rather than doing, which is very much of the ego, and you're making something into form, you're making something happen, and that can be stressful and full of fear. And it's sort of reaching towards love rather than being or coming from love. It's extending itself. And it's about finding that place of beingness and recognizing that when you're feeling resistant and full of uncertainty and anxiety about things, it's often because you're projecting into the future. You're looking at what you're doing now and you can't see as to how that's going to further you in any way or get you to where you want to go. And so more often than not, we might just stop doing something completely because we've convinced ourselves in our minds that it's not going to get us to where we want to go, which who knows where we actually want to go. I think the idea that we have any sort of say on what we want or how we want things to look is also in itself slightly ridiculous, because everything is for our highest and best. There isn't necessarily a certain thing of how it looks, and actually being attached to how something looks tends to stop it from coming in. When we lose our attachment, things naturally and effortlessly arise. So if you're finding yourself struggling to get on with things or to do things, it's not about not doing it, but it's about being and resting back into awareness and oneness and seeing from there where you are guided to do. And sometimes you have to lean into and trust that. Like, it might be that you are really struggling with getting on with some work or whatever it might be, and you relax back and you get the real desire to read a book. And I don't think you should overlook that, because you're leaning into trusting that intuition and trusting that guidance and allowing yourself to flow with it. And you don't know what going and getting your book and reading it in a park might bring you. I think that's the beauty of this, is that miracles are always around you. Miracles can always happen. It's our egos that make us think that certain things have to be done in a certain way. And I get it so much, especially if you are comparing yourself to others, which obviously comparison is the thief of joy. But if you are comparing yourself to others, I totally get how you may look at your life and it's not quote unquote perfect. But then we don't know what happens behind closed doors, and we don't know how other people feel. You may have some friends that are top lawyers and they may not be anywhere near as happy as perhaps you are. So when it says you need do nothing, it's true. In the grander scheme of things, you don't need to achieve or do anything. And also you don't need to do anything from ego. Those are the two things it means. Instead, it's about being, and it's about resting back into flow and alignment and seeing where you're taken from that point. And you may notice that in those moments you can achieve 10 times the amount of things you could achieve if you were believing in the separate self and your ego form. Instead, you switch to the expansiveness and wholeness that is your true self and I am. And from there, everything seems easy. Everything has a solution. You're in the present moment, so you're not judging your success on the future, and you're not trying to ascertain as to what you're doing now is going to lead to the future. I think it's just another example of how the solution always is just returning to I am and returning to the here and now, and to use your egoic experience to develop that and to really lean into all of this truth and knowledge and spiritual discourse that is around us, and not to just spiritually bypass it with, well, I'm not an ego, I'm not a body, but instead to sort of move through it rather than around it, to see what that moment when you wake up and you'd like to open whatever book you're reading or take a minute to meditate, and the thought pops into your head, but we've got to get up for work. To use that thought of who is it that needs to get up to work? Why do we need to get up for work now? Why do we need to do that now? And use it to be, and be in presence. Because eventually you won't need to have dedicated moments of time to center yourself, but you'll be able to go to work and do that doing, but instead you're being. And perhaps that job will go away and another one will arise, you just never know. So yeah, you need do nothing. There is nothing you need to do. It's all working out for you. It's all about being and being present and following that inner desire and inner nudge. And if you have any resistance to that, letting that go. If you have any attachments to how it should look, letting that go too. And knowing that the work you're doing now, the spiritual work you're doing now, will only pay you back in dividends in years to come. one of Mum's favourite teachers is Jennifer Hadley, and she says spiritual work saves time. So it may take some time in the moment, you may have to take 2 or 3 hours to really get to the bottom of something, but ultimately it will save time in the long run because you won't be bothered by that again. How beautiful, how wonderful. And you'll be more in alignment, in I am, in the knowingness of everything. And truly in that knowingness of everything, in that exact moment of pure bliss and presence, there are really no problems, really aren't. And that is the place that you can only ever truly know to exist or reside in. And it's about bringing in those pockets of presence to all parts of life, and that's by being and not doing.